Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Louise Houghton.
Hello and a warm welcome to the show today from all of us here in our Berlin-based studios. We start the show off pretty much standing still. Well, I don't, but you'll soon see those who make a living out of it. Here's what's coming up. Cutting a figure, what it takes to be a living statue. Ode to Beethoven. We tune into the annual music festival in Bonn. And Ticket to Ride, an all-inclusive pass to tasting wine in South Tyrol. I'm sure many of you have seen them before in tourist hotspots around the world. Someone who you think is a statue, but then suddenly comes alive. Many such performers have gathered at the annual International Living Statue competition in the Netherlands. And we followed one of the previous winners from Berlin to see if he managed to impress the judges once again.
These statues don't just look real, they are real. These figures are actual people, and they're competing against each other at the World Championship of Living Statues in the Dutch city of Arnhem. John Eicher from Germany is here for the 6th time. His simple white costume sets him apart from all the others.
I'm really nervous. My act is completely new this time, and it requires a bit of participation from the audience.
John Eicher's character is called Blanco, a debut character. The idea is passers-by get to jump in themselves. They can grab brushes and paint and turn the statue into their very own canvas. Whether he's playing a living statue or airbrushed from head to toe, John Eicher gets right into character. His clients hire him for various jobs. The 48-year-old earns his living being a statue. His most successful figure is the Candyman. He crisscrossed the globe as a candy salesman and won the World Living Statues Championship in 2010. He first tried out his craft in his home city of Berlin.
At first I had to look inward at myself and my body. What happens when you have an itch? Well, eventually it goes away, and then all your attention turns outward. Your viewing angle expands all on its own. It's hard to believe, but when I look straight ahead, I can see someone walking behind me.
John Eicher uses the downtime between appearances to think up new characters. Living statues barely move their bodies and certainly not their mouths, and that's right up John's alley.
Personally, I prefer quiet or monotone things. Maybe that comes from standing still and having to persevere for hours. The figures don't have any particular characteristics or soul. They're not supposed to. They're fake.
John
Eicher buys his props like coloured contact lenses at specialty stores like Mask World in Berlin. He spends a lot of time perfecting his costumes.
I'm not able to actually move around and show people what I'm doing, so the costume is, in a way, protective armor for me. It makes me feel comfortable. And I think it's important that a costume be something more than what people see in their everyday lives.
That holds true for Blanco too, the figure John Eicher first presented in Arnhem. He gets ready at a church in the city centre. Most of his competitors are decked out in wild, fanciful costumes, but John Eicher has a different strategy.
I'm basically taking 3 steps backward and returning to the very beginning. I'm giving the audience a figure that's not finished yet. That's Blanco.
But will his idea hold up against the competition? All across the city, children and adults, amateurs and pros, more than 200 people from around the world are competing as living statues. The spectacle draws some 300,000 visitors every year. They, along with a jury, get to decide the winner.
You see really
difficult moves.
It's an art to stand still for so long.
That's a lot of work for them, and they're showing their soul to the public.
After more than 3 hours, Blanco isn't so blank anymore. The visitors have lost all reservations about picking up a brush, and John Eicher is enjoying every bit.
I can't even move my face anymore. I have something like 200 layers of makeup on. But it worked out just the way I wanted.
John Eicher has become the first person to win the world title twice. And with that, the world's best living statues say goodbye and get ready for the next competition.
Now, Paris Fashion Week is one of the biggest events in the fashion industry. Hundreds of luxury labels and prolific designers were in the French capital showing their collections on the runways. But what ends up in the stores is actually all decided by buyers in the showrooms. A vast showroom set up during Paris Fashion Week showcased 23 German labels, giving up-and-coming designers a fantastic opportunity.
Berliners Oliver Lühr and Thomas Bentz are in the French capital for the Pret-a-Porter shows. They're here to work, but they've found time to enjoy a bit of Paris flair over a cup of coffee.
When you walk across the road, you notice right away that you're not in Berlin. That's especially true in areas like Faubourg Saint-Honoré or Saint-Germain-des-Prés. This is the capital of luxury. Women of every age have fantastic hairdos. The older, the chicer. You see that a lot less in Berlin.
And this is where they're working. The Berlin showroom is making its second appearance at Paris Fashion Week. The project is financed by the Berlin city government and the EU. A fashion industry jury selects 23 designers to take part in it.
Sure, there's a fashion week in Berlin, but the Paris one is much more international. You meet a lot more buyers here than you do in Berlin.
It's a fantastic opportunity for the young designers and their Achtland label.
It was clear to us from the beginning that we had to make the leap to Paris and onto a more international stage than Berlin. On the one hand, because of the product. In our price category, we have to reach international customers. But we also have to gauge ourselves with the others here, and we can't shy away from competition.
They put together the new collection at their Berlin studio. It's a young brand, only 2 years old. They set it up when they moved to the German capital after years in London. Oliver Lühr is the creative mind of the duo. He studied fashion at the famous Central St. Martin's School.
We were very comfortable in London. It was our home. But then we felt that to get the creative process rolling, we needed a little friction and something new.
Their first collection came out in July. Their striking and richly contrasting designs immediately earned them an award at Berlin Fashion Week and accolades from the press. The sophisticated creations certainly come at a price. This hand-embroidered jacket costs 4,500 euros retail.
They're expensive. We used expensive, skilled labor, but the fabrics are expensive too. It's a conscious decision. We think it's important to create something that has lasting value. A design which ideally could become an heirloom, something which doesn't lose its relevance.
Their top-of-the-line designs sold twice at the showroom. Many international purchasers come here to look for new designs. This buyer was looking for dresses for her Istanbul boutique.
The fabrics are gorgeous. They are very beautifully sewed and just modern, and that's what people need actually.
And she's really interested in the idea of a Berlin showroom.
It's just quite complicated when you go in a showroom and see lots of designers from different countries, and it's really nice to have the feeling of the country, actually, what they are feeling, what's the trend in the country. It's more daily, the German designers, more wearable.
The Berlin showroom has given the two up-and-coming designers a start in Paris. They both can imagine moving here permanently in the future.
We're still trying to figure out who responds best to our designs. I can't really say whether we'll be based in London, New York, or Paris in the long term.
You never know what the future will bring. Maybe in a few years' time, they'll have a show of their own on the catwalks of Paris Fashion Week.
Ludwig van Beethoven is a great German composer. He was born in Bonn, and that is where Europe's largest and most successful classical music event is held. During the month-long Beethoven Festival, up to 160 concerts take place. One of the highlights was of Beethoven's only opera, which was screened in a square downtown for the general public to enjoy.
It's an unusual evening in Bonn's Beethoven Hall. Paavo Järvi and the German Chamber Philharmonic Bremen are performing a concert version of Fidelio, the only opera composed by Ludwig van Beethoven.
It's not really an opera, it's not really a play, it's a sort of a Singspiel. It has a very large and long sections of spoken text in the middle, which, for example, Mozart operas also had. And yet it doesn't quite feel natural on stage, and it doesn't entirely sit well on the concertant version. And finding that right medium between telling the story, but also letting the music tell the story, creates a lot of questions.
The performance of Fidelio is one of the high points of this year's Bonn Beethoven Festival, and not only in terms of the music. For the last 7 years, selected concerts have been video-linked to a square downtown. This year, the live videocast drew a crowd of some 3,000 people to the market square in Bonn.
I would have had to pay a lot of money to hear the concert in the Beethoven Hall. This way I can afford to enjoy a great concert in a great atmosphere.
I couldn't afford a ticket. That's why I'm here. I'm happy to put up with the cold.
For us, Beethoven is a highlight.
Through the camera, we see the faces close up. If I was sitting in the auditorium far away from the musicians, I wouldn't see their facial expressions. And I can imagine it wouldn't come across as well.
Moitza Erdmann, an internationally renowned soprano, can be heard in the role of Marceline. For her, singing in an opera without a stage set or costumes is an exception.
It's odd that one doesn't seem to miss much, and one isn't misled by the wrong things either. Of course, I love the opera and musical theater, and I'd love to act. But here, concentrating on the essence in a concert performance of an opera is fascinating and enriching.
The videocast in downtown Bonn is a new tradition introduced only in 2007. Deutsche Welle has been the festival's media partner from the beginning and always presents an accompanying program lasting several hours.
When you have a live transmission broadcast by us, then obviously, first and foremost, that helps to make us better known among the German public. And it also makes clear that we're anchored here in society and connected with it.
Conductor Paavo Järvi and the German Chamber Philharmonic Bremen, as orchestra in residence, have shaped the program of the Beethoven Festival for years.
With the German Chamber Philharmonic Bremen, which has now also performed the Fidelio with Paavo Järvi, we've managed to create our own culture of interpretation. Today, anyone who interprets these symphonies here or other works by Beethoven has to measure themselves against this interpretation.
Beethoven's Fidelio evokes the spirit of the French Revolution, but it fits well with this year's motto of the Beethoven Festival, Metamorphoses.
And what better way to enjoy the music than with a nice glass of wine? Italy's South Tyrol region is home to some world-class vineyards, even though it's the smallest wine-growing region in the country. Now, a wine pass gives visitors access to many of the wineries and vineyards in the area. And it also provides transport, so they're free to sample as much as they like.
In the heart of South Tyrol, there are grapevines as far as the eye can see, shaping the landscape around the capital city, Bolzano. Local vineyards offer up a taste of the region's spectacular wines.
I'd like to welcome you here to the Grease family farm in Rencio on the edge of Bolzano. Today we'll try the Lagrein grape. First you'll try the vintage Lagrein and then you'll taste the Lagrein Reserva. The vintage is from 2012 and the Reserva is from 2010.
It's the first tasting of the day, but these three wine lovers, two teachers and a jewelry designer, have a lot more on tap for today. They've bought wine passes, an all-inclusive program for 3 or 7 days, costing either 35 or 40 euros. Their passes open doors across South Tyrol.
It's a guest card that our visitors can use for guided tours of the cellars, tastings, trips to the vineyards, and that's all combined with mobility, with the public transportation in South Tyrol. Visitors can take the bus from one wine cellar to the next without worrying about how much they drink.
The Wine Pass offers a unique experience along South Tyrol's picturesque wine route. Lake Kaltern is one of the region's most famous wine-growing areas and a popular getaway. At the Klosterhof Winery, visitors weave among the vines on a tour that can last up to 2 hours.
The Wine Pass includes a visit to the vineyard. This is a classic Trollinger grape area. Trollinger is a red wine grape native to South Tyrol, and the vine gets its name from its location. So in Kaltern, it's named after Lake Kaltern. Now let's go to the cellar to try a glass.
Guests learn everything there is to know about wine.
When you take a sip, you'll notice the very fine aroma. There's a hint of almond, a bit of violets. Those are very typical aromas for the Lake Kaltern region.
Time for lunch. There's wine, of course, but not too much. They have another tasting lined up.
You have to hold back a little bit. If you just drink wine the whole time, there are consequences, of course. But if you try a little bit from everything, it's fine.
I realized that you actually learn more about the country through its wines. When you go to other places and try the wine there, you get an impression of the place. It's like getting a taste of the country.
If you think about the fact that we can use the wine pass for 3 days for only 35 euros, it's absolutely worth it. And when you realize that one cellar tour or tasting costs 10 euros and that we can use all the public transportation too, it's definitely worthwhile.
There are 16 towns that lie along the wine road, including charming Termeno, a small village known to wine connoisseurs the world over. Termeno is home to the Gewürztraminer grape, and vintners here teamed up to form a collective. They moved into this impressive building of steel, glass, and wood 3 years ago. Now visitors come just to see the structure. The wine bar inside opens up to a spectacular view of the landscape.
Today in 2013, we have nearly 300 members in an area that covers nearly 4 municipalities. Here we have one of the 3 native grape varieties, the Gewürztraminer. How does it taste? Well, it has an intense flavor. It's a sophisticated wine. Here in Tramin, we say it's almost a pure meditation wine.
Solar energy is used to power the building, while groundwater cools the oak barrels in the cellar. It's a modern winery in the heart of a region that's been producing wine for more than 1,000 years. And is just one of the many treasures along the South Tyrolean wine route.
Celebrities like Tom Cruise own horse sculptures by British artist Nick Fidian Green. But you don't have to buy them to be able to admire them. His monumental pieces can be found all over the world, including in the centre of London. We visited him to find out where he draws his inspiration.
In the hustle and bustle around London's Marble Arch, the giant bronze head of a horse exudes an atmosphere of calm. Though it was only installed a few years ago, it's already something of a local landmark. Horses provide a wealth of inspiration for artist Nick Fidian Green. He's lived around them his entire life.
My contemplations and thoughts when I'm observing the animal are then, I suppose, impregnated in it. And that, I suppose, is why I'm trying to do something more than just talk about this is a horse, just for the sake of the horse. I'm trying to say this is a horse, but it has a spirit.
Nick always models his figures on live horses to ensure he achieves the perfect form in his plaster molds. He takes care of the fine detail work in his studio just a few minutes away from his home near London. In his sculptures, Nick seeks to capture a moment of calm in the life of a horse. For him, the animal is highly charged with symbolism.
It is a moment that was inspired by the idea of the horse coming down to water. And of course, a horse will never drink if it is in any way frightened. So it has to be at a state of total, I suppose, it's invulnerability, isn't it? It's knowing that it is secure.
The artist is usually in his studio by 5 in the morning. He says that when the world is waking up and he's alone, his senses are at their sharpest. His work takes its cue from the classical sculptures of ancient Greece. Nick has been producing horse sculptures for more than 20 years, but the process is still a learning experience.
Is it tilting too far forward, too far back? It's critical. 1 inch at the bottom can be 6 inches out at the top. Now, that sort of balance, that constant looking at it and reworking it and redrawing it and reforming it, all of those things seem to be never resolved. I mean, it may be obsessive, but I think it's just trying to find perfection in this form.
The artist has also mastered the art of bronze founding. He experiments with different chemicals to produce the right patina for his works. Fumes released by patinating the bronze are toxic, and doctors say they could be what caused the artist's leukemia 8 years ago. Nick has since made a full recovery, and he still completes the entire work process himself.
You can't get anybody else to finish your painting. You can't expect the last touch must be the artist, as far as I'm concerned. That's why even working the metal is something that, even leaving it to the founders, there is a difference, I believe. Now, probably nobody's going to notice the difference except for me, but it matters more to me that colour and the finish of the metal and everything is right.
Nick's sculptures can be found in collections around the world. Transporting them is always a major challenge. Whether the sculptures remain in England or travel to Italy or Australia or Hong Kong. Nick models his horses on images that date back to mankind's early history.
The images I think of didn't have a man on his back, presumably because he couldn't get on its back, he couldn't control it. And so the horse became this animal that roamed the earth, that was later to become the most important animal that roamed the earth and roams the earth. There is no other animal, I suppose. There are many animals, but the horse is the one that changed man's destiny.
Horses have accompanied Nick since his childhood. He says he and his art couldn't live without them. A version of his colossal horse head is permanently installed within view of Nick Vidian Green's family home, lasting testimony to a lifelong passion.
And that is all we have time for today. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.